Now, for those of you who didn't just see that, which is all of you because none of you were in the green room, Glenn asked me how long he had to fill up his water bottle. And I said, I won't start it for another, and then hit the intro. So, Glenn. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast. I am Mundungus Creevy, alongside my co-host, Glenn Hauser, Gage Madrid, and the hashtag Ashton Kutcher over there in the top right. So how's everybody doing?
You know what? After that, Mike, I don't feel like I want any water. I'm seeing you, and I feel like a grimace shake. Happy birthday!
He is wearing a purple shirt,
right? Represent. I don't know what, but representing.
So I feel like the only correlation that I have to Ashton Kutcher, by the way, is that my middle name is Ashton. That's about the only correlation.
Yeah, that's it. Fair enough. That's it.
What's funny is Cam's the only one that's been pushing that the Ashton Kutcher lookalike thing, and now he's backing off it. Like we've saddled him with this lookalike comparison.
Or maybe it's because I've seen thousands and thousands of pictures now, and it's like, you know what? No.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think he looked like? Because it wasn't you.
I have no idea personally. Like, maybe it's just a certain time I did it or whatever. And plus, it wasn't the first time when someone actually even said it to me. I think it was someone at a store or something. It's like, oh, you look like Ashton Kutcher or something. And for whatever reason, that has just always stuck with me.
Yeah. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about, and this is something that's been going on over the last couple weeks, which is the devaluation of the running back position in the NFL. There's this whole big thing now where I guess a bunch of NFL running backs have a big group chat together where they're talking about how to change this, how to change that. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts on it. Are we going to see the end of the running back here soon, or are we going to get this figured out?
So I think if ownership really wants to put a stop to this, is they'll get Bill involved in the text chain, and it'll get disbanded almost immediately. But
I mean, true.
Really, the issue for the running backs is it's become such a devalued position in that they're, say they get drafted in the first round, there's a five-year contract, then they get tagged, and the tag is less than they're expecting. Then they can get tagged a second time. So maybe the play is that you're not, if you get tagged the first year, you're not allowed to get tagged the second year. So now you're 7 years into your career. What is it, like when you hit 30 as a running back, you're generally old news. So yeah. I mean, it's just it's a lot of money for that position, especially when, there's most teams are going the tandem route. What do you think, guys?
Yeah. It's almost like, to use it's almost like a car analogy. Like the moment you buy a car and it hits the lot, it starts depreciating in value. Right. And so it's just for a running back, the moment you draft him or sign him, a fresh off of free agency, the moment he hits the field, he depreciates in value. And it's part of me, it's sad because if you even look at some of the, obviously the older offenses in the past, they were bread and butter, really leaning heavily on the running back position. And and even if it's a tandem, it's really important. Even if it's a tandem situation, they are still valuing the running back position. They just are coming at it from a lot of different, players and making sure that they are fresh and they aren't losing the tread on their tires. So it's just I think it's there are definitely some offenses that do that. Obviously the Miami Dolphins are one, the San Francisco 49ers, are certainly one that have really leaned on using a variety of different backs. It is sad though that when you do this air raid offense, in terms of maybe what the Kansas City Chiefs are trying to maybe even get to, but even then, I wouldn't necessarily say that a running back feels depreciated or devalued in there, because look at what Jerick McKinnon was able to do with the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's but I will say though, it definitely seems though like the running back position contractually is getting devalued, because because of what the worth, has shown in the past with guys like Todd Gurley, Christian McCaffrey, and some of the others, of note in the past.
Yeah. And I feel like there's also the issue of supply versus demand as well. I mean, we've seen examples of players such as Isaiah Pacheco who can provide quality level running back play. You draft him in the 7th round and you're paying him pennies on the dollar. So if you can find a quality young running back, teams seem to be of the opinion that you play your running back through their rookie contract. If they're solid, you franchise tag them. If they're really solid, you franchise tag them again, but you always make sure you have that young backup running back in the fold. Now, that's a tough position to be in for the player because I'm somebody who's pro player, and it is a bit of a dehumanizing element of this business, and a dehumanizing element of a lot of businesses, quite frankly, is you have to be able to weigh out production versus cost, and it's tough when you have to look at it from the perspective of an NFL GM and trying to save ultimate salary cap dollars, but then you have to think about the human element of things, what this player has done for your city, your team, your organization. So I feel like at the end of the day, almost everybody loses in this scenario except for the team, if that makes any sense.
So look at the Giants as a perfect example here. From what I understand is they were trying to sign Saquon to a couple-year contract. Mm-hmm. He wanted $16 million. They did not want to go up that high, and they were going to tag Daniel Jones. Now, Daniel Jones, his game really relies a lot on Saquon Barkley. A little dipsy doodle action. Jones signs for $40 million a year. Saquon gets tagged for just over 10. So now there's a $30 million a year difference between those two star players on the same team. I can understand why they're a bit miffed. It's one of those positions that, you're seeing guards making more money than some of these top tier running backs. And it's just, the trend doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon.
Well, and look
I was going to say, and when you look at the game of football, right, like there's one position that you value the most, and that's quarterback. Obviously, mm-hmm. That's the one drives the team, drives the success. But if you look at a second position that would change the fortunes of a team, it'd be running back. I mean, the Raiders are not going to be as successful last year, without Josh Jacobs. The Giants don't make the playoffs without Saquon Barkley. It just doesn't happen. You look at the 49ers, their team is based around the run. Even Brock Purdy, he did good when he was in there, but the offense was still based on the run. And so I don't think anything changes until the NFLPA gets involved and sees if maybe they can knock back rookie contracts for running backs to like 3 years or 2 years, and then they're able to renegotiate after that.
But see, the thing is, the moment you do that specifically for a running back, you have to do it for all the others, though, because it's like you can't. The moment you can't do it for, because like if you do it strictly for a running back, then obviously a lot of position groups and even the running backs are even going to be, as draft picks, are going to be coming out and saying, why do we get 3 years? And the edge group, the cornerback room, the quarterback room, so on and so forth, they get the 4 years and maybe even plus the player option. So it's just like, and even then, like if you're a first round draft pick, you're signing him for a 3-year deal plus the player option or something. Like it's just like, it's very bad business even for that. Like if you even go to the 3-year scenario for a draft pick.
Right, because then you're going to have other position groups that are just going to be screaming their tails off like, hey, if running backs are able to hit free agency after just 2 years, why can't we?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it really boils down to the franchise tag and making rules about that back-to-back tagging. Because at that point, some of these guys will be 27, 28. They'll still be under that 30-year-old, mark that seems to hold most of these guys back. I don't know what more can be done. The complaining isn't going to help things. As a Bronco fan, I'm hoping Josh Jacobs really takes it seriously and at least sits out week 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, and week
Yep.
17 just doesn't play.
The whole season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's just really, really tough because obviously with running backs, you're basically, and for most positions, you're working for half of your career for free. And with running backs, you're wasting a lot of your prime rushing years in college where you're not receiving compensation unless you're a top tier player and you can get NIL. Otherwise, it's really, really tough. And that's where I'm somebody who feels like college athletes should be compensated. That's a different discussion for a different day. And I know there are a lot of varying opinions on that topic, but I feel like this is an example of where running backs in particular, if you're a young player, say in high school, and you're a dominant athlete on the field, you should try to transition away from the running back position, I feel like, and try to transition into the receiver position. If you can learn to catch, if you can learn to run routes, those kind of things, because just from a value perspective and how much you're going to accrue over the course of your career, I feel like the wide receiver position would be much more valuable than the running back position. So I'm wondering, are we going to see sort of a phasing out of the running back position over the course of the time just by younger athletes not choosing to play that position?
Well, and even to that point, if they do phase out of the running back position, you're also going to be talking about an entirely like schematic offense to where there's no running back, where it's almost like strictly a shotgun offense, or that it's basically just a quarterback under center. I kid, but it's just like, it's almost like a quarterback under center with nothing, no one behind him, whether maybe that's a tight end or something. I don't know, but it's just like, I'm just throwing scenarios out there, but it's just like, but it's just, but it's one of those things like they would have to schematically make an entirely new offense,
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
And that's, and so like, I think the other thing too, like, and it almost like brings me back to a previous Denver Bronco in a sense. And there were some other factors, obviously, but it's like, it almost feels like too, it's like you think back to when Philip Lindsay was a Bronco and how quickly he also went out. Like he became no longer a Denver Bronco. And, you think back to how impactful he was, with the Denver Broncos. And then you also factor in, he certainly may not have had that receiving ability. He certainly showed it in college, however, but there's those fair arguments that he was also never utilized once, Pat Shurmur was there and so on and so forth. And so it's just like, so then it becomes, should the Denver Broncos have even kept Philip Lindsay, right? So like there's that question again. It's like, should they even entertain that thought? So it's just like, it goes back to even that narrative of like, if a running back is showing his worth, right? Like they should maybe make that effort to make it seem like he is definitely valued. And so it's just like, because like at the end of the day, we should not necessarily be showing favoritism to one position or another. If that player is impactful, you should compensate it one way or another if you can.
So then the next big question for me is, do the other players on the teams come out in support of the running backs, or do they not?
I feel like we've seen pretty strong. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that would be something. Yeah, that would be strong. I mean, if you're talking about running backs, being devalued, if like, for instance, if you see particularly a defensive player, like if you see a defensive player come out, like a safety or even a defensive back, like let's just say, just for sake of argument, Justin Simmons spoke out. Like, let's just say Justin Simmons spoke out about how the running back position needs to be valued a lot more. And if something like that comes to fruition, like that might carry a lot more weight than say, another offensive position, or even a quarterback for that matter. Like, especially like, if a quarterback is the focal point leader of that room, like if a quarterback is speaking out in favor of like Mahomes or even Tom Brady for that matter, even though he's retired, if Tom Brady comes out and says, I would not have won many Super Bowls if it wasn't for James White, so I mean, like if he comes out and, some of these other quarterbacks, like maybe even Peyton Manning for that matter, then I think it would carry a lot more weight.
And ultimately the decision comes down to the owners, right? On deciding, is it Goodell or is it the owners that decide however this gets fixed? I mean, obviously there's going to be, I'm assuming, a pay bump at some point. whether it's bumping the salary cap up or moving things around. Something along those lines has to happen, and it comes from the owners, right?
Mhm.
Well, the owners are the ones that don't want to pay it. So
I feel like there's going to have to
happen.
be some. There's going to have to be some sort of negotiations. I think at this point the NFLPA is going to probably have to get involved. But then there's the question itself: Are they going to want to get involved? Because there have been some times where the NFLPA has not wanted to insert themselves in these kind of issues, even though that's what they are there for. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out over the next few years. And I'm not sure when it's coming to negotiate the next CBA, but you have to imagine in the coming years when that happens, who knows, maybe the issue will be addressed before then. Hi, Kitty. But if not, then that'll definitely be a point where this will have to rear its ugly head.
Who are you talking to?
Things just got weird. Not to belabor the point, but you might find some running backs that are going to be like, all right, why don't you line me up in the slot? Just right. So they can run enough snaps that they can be classified as a wide receiver or tight end when they're renegotiating their or when they're tagged for their.
Well, and maybe that's why I think you start to see some of the gray area with running backs too. Like if we're devaluing the running back position, that's also what makes it a little bit difficult for guys like a Christian McCaffrey, because like it's hard when you look at a guy like Christian McCaffrey, and obviously with what he was doing in Stanford and then now what he's doing in the NFL, it's like you can very easily see his value as a receiver. So it's just like, and so to a certain extent, it's that same argument that say a tight end has, like a receiving threat tight end. Like if you guys think back to, when Sean Payton had, Jimmy Graham, and like Jimmy Graham was going through with the franchise tag, and Graham was like wanting wide receiver money, but no, he was so it's just like, it's almost like that same argument. It's just like, so I think for a running back perspective, it's like there are those guys that do multiple different things. And so for that, it's difficult.
So going from this topic into another topic that just is really starting to piss me off. Mm-hmm. It's been like, this is the second season that we're talking, or second off season we're talking about this. People keep railing against Russell Wilson, and I don't get it. Like, why? If you want to like critique his play last year, please do. But why are you going after the man personally? Like, I don't understand it.
Yeah, I actually texted Sayer this, and I don't know if people just are afraid to admit it, but we may be entering the point where Russell Wilson is getting the Tim Tebow hatred treatment, like as far as like who he is as a person, like straight up. I mean, like, critique the player, critique who he is with what he's been, doing on the field, but take, his, who he is, what he's done, and I get the stuff, with what he was doing, during the bye week and stuff like that. But again, like, it's not my typical date night, right? But it's just like, why are we critiquing something that is a date night, that is a special night for, say, Russell and Ciara? So it's just like, why are we even going that far and critiquing something like that? And so and then it becomes, and we actually even were talking about this in our text chain, it's just like, then it becomes, you get stuff from the defensive players, right? Defensive players from the Super Bowl, 43-8 Super Bowl. And so it's just like, it's getting so tiresome to the point where these guys just had such ego problems to where it's like, you very clearly had something wrong with Russell Wilson to begin with, that you guys are upset because he was the face of your franchise, when we all know that the quarterback is probably the most important position in all of sports, maybe. And you guys are just flat out upset with this idea that Russell Wilson just has a little bit more clout than you guys.
And it seems to be the same two defensive players, the KJ Wrights and Richard Shermans of the world, complaining. And, KJ Wright, I don't want this to go viral. This is exactly what you're like. 100%. That's exactly what you want. And we were talking about, what did we see a couple days ago? He's so hated by his Seahawks teammates that there he is at Tyler Lockett's wedding, pictured with Lockett and DK Metcalf, DK wearing shorts with a tuxedo, but that's It's bold, but if you have legs that look like that, go for it. Yeah.
You do you.
But
buddy.
the point being is, do you think if like Russell was going to be a distraction because he was so disliked by so many of the guests there that he would have been invited? No, not at all. I mean, it's tiresome. It only flared up once he started playing poorly. You know, you didn't hear them complaining about him when he had some of the best 10-year stretch of any quarterback in NFL history. Like, enough already. Just leave the dude alone.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, don't get me wrong. Russell Wilson, his personality type is definitely one that is a little bit, he's his own person, you know, and I love Russ as a person. He's somebody who I feel like I would have a really good conversation with if given the opportunity to do so. But
Wink, wink.
Sorry, go ahead.
Wink, wink.
Over a danger witch. Yeah.
Over a danger witch. But it feels like this overblown narrative allows these hit pieces to just continue to spiral. And a lot of them are predicated on false assumptions and false narratives. And they're all, again, coming from, it seems like, the same source: Richard Sherman, KJ Wright, Seattle Seahawks defensive players. And then we have, obviously, the little spat with Mike Purcell. That gets referenced in some of these hit pieces as well.
Mm-hmm.
But then for every Richard Sherman or KJ Wright out there, there is DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jerry Jeudy, Justin Simmons,
Even Marshawn Lynch.
Marshawn Lynch, absolutely.
Garrett Bowles.
Garrett Bowles.
I just don't understand why they're still talking about it. Like, there's so many other stories and headlines to talk about. Like, why are you still talking about Russell Wilson? You got Aaron Rodgers moving teams. You've got DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Titans. Like,
You've got Deshaun Watson. They should be in prison.
Like, all these,
like, for real,
all these storylines. Why are you talking about Russell Wilson?
Yeah, and that's the other, not to go even further on you, Glenn, but it's just like, that's the other part of this. We are throwing Russell Wilson into the category that he is the worst contract being handed out in NFL history, when we all know who the worst NFL contract in NFL history was, and it is Deshaun Watson, and he does belong in prison. So it's just like,
sorry,
yeah, it's just, it was flat out stealing. Like, and we all know about the Cleveland Browns and their history anyway. But
off the field aside with Deshaun Watson, when you look at the players' tape in comparison, Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson didn't have the lack of execution on offense that Russell Wilson had to deal with. He didn't have receivers running into each other. He didn't have offensive linemen blowing blocks on a consistent basis like Russell Wilson did. Deshaun Watson looked like borderline the worst quarterback in the NFL when he got on the field last year.
Yeah.
And I don't care how much of that you want to predicate on him not being on the field for a year and a half. What he did before that That shouldn't be an excuse, dude. If you are getting paid $250+ million fully guaranteed, you should produce, dude. And Russell Wilson actually had some legitimate excuses. Deshaun Watson did not.
Your cat's trying to calm you down. Like
She is. She can tell that my heart rate's starting to go up, huh, baby?
Yeah.
Let's go on.
Is anyone surprised Gage has an orange cat?
No.
I have
neither.
2.
We do too. Yeah.
Let's go into a little bit of a lighter conversation. Madden rankings. Madden 24
Oh boy.
came out. Justin Simmons is at 92. Does anybody else think that's too low?
Yes, he should be 99. He's 99 in our hearts. And also, they need to get his face scan right. Like, the guy is like the guy is like a 92, and they just for some reason can't get his face scan right.
Can't they just take the Michael Porter Jr. one that they have on file for the other game?
For 2K?
It would pass off, man. It would.
But like, what's funny though is like, it isn't just Justin Simmons. Like, I think when I did like the look at like for Madden 23 this last year, like I have to go back through, and I don't know if I have the screenshots and stuff, but like Quinn Miners had it. Like, now granted, Quinn Miners was a rookie, but it's just like, you know, it is funny to see just how bad it is. Like, I think Mike Purcell had it even bad.
I saw the scan of Ashton Kutcher, and he looked like Cam. I mean, it's so off.
I'm somebody who plays Madden pretty frequently, honestly, and it's disappointing to see that EA fails to pour their resources into the proper points in the game that need to get fixed. Gameplay is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Coverage busts are an absolute common occurrence. You have routes that can be just absolutely manipulated to where you have receivers running wide open and no defender even near them. It's ridiculous how Madden is so unrealistic and non-conducive to real life football. And with Madden ratings especially, I feel like are very much influenced on player popularity. And you see players like Jerry Jeudy, for example, who's got an 83 in Madden. And I think his route running isn't even like 92 or something like that. Jerry Judy's route running should be in the high 90s.
Which, by the way, that 83 or 82 would put him in the top 35 wide receiver, like in Madden. Like, to put that in perspective.
So who do they have higher than him in route running? Like, I think it's pretty well known. Jerry Judy's top 3 when it comes to route running.
Well, at least I wouldn't necessarily have been upset if it's like top 10 or top 7 route running, but like, it's pretty obvious about like, with where Madden even feels about the Broncos too. Like, so yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Who's the highest ranked Bronco? Is it PS2 in Madden?
PS2.
Mm-hmm.
PS2. At least it was last year.
Good, as it should be. Let's see here. Oh, so we talked a little bit about Russell Wilson and the hate that he gets. What about the future for Russell Wilson in Denver? His contract was 5 years. Is he going to play that out? Or do we need to start looking for a rookie to replace him? Are we looking for Jarrett Stidham to step up in the next couple of years? Do we need to start looking for his replacement now?
I feel like next year will be the telling tale there. If Russell Wilson comes out and lights the world on fire next season, then I feel like the Broncos are going to be a lot more confident in him going towards the latter part of this contract. However, there have been some signs that he's not going to age particularly gracefully, even though you have somebody like Sean Payton who will help alleviate that process, just like he did with Drew Brees. I feel like the mobility is obviously not going to get any better as the years go on. I feel like we're kind of stuck with a Russell Wilson that's never going to be quite as mobile as, say, he was when he was 25. But I feel like he'll be way mobile than he was, say, last year because he was dealing with a torn hamstring for most of the year. Yeah. But there are just other elements of his game where I feel like you can legitimately question if Russell Wilson's going to age gracefully. But if he goes in next season and he puts out on tape signs of hope, then I feel like that gives us a much more heavy vote of confidence in that aspect.
Yeah.
Right. To Gage's point, this season is the telling point. And I think he's going to bounce back. I really do. I think he's, if we can stay healthy and he likes being coached and Peyton's going to coach him hard, hold him accountable, not allow some of the other things, I think it's going to be fine. But it's one of those situations, though, the Broncos can get out of it after this year with a pretty hefty hit on the salary cap. But essentially, if they keep him, they better be guaranteeing that he's going to be solid for the following 2 years, because it's with the new contract that's coming on, it's going to be where they would have to have him for 2 years. They really can't get out of it after that. So we're looking at one Russell for 1 or Russell for 3 at this point, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I feel like for the Broncos, I think maybe one of the best case scenarios that you could have asked for is that they, make this offense pretty run heavy, because that is the one thing that can also help prolong Russ even more, within his career. And so, like, if he is successful and he is, and he does have that bounce back year, then there is that window where he can be that Broncos quarterback for a couple more years. However, I will say this: it should never preclude you to be taking that guy if you feel like he's there to be taken. For instance, like, you know, with 2024 coming up, that is supposed to be a pretty loaded quarterback class, and where the Broncos are placed within that draft, you know, pick or whatever, could be, you know, a really nice spot for you to take a quarterback, say like a Drake May, right? Like if he's there, like, you know, and there's no guarantee, obviously, you're going to be taking a Caleb Williams because, you know, who knows? I mean, I'm sure we all know the Broncos probably aren't going to be tanking, you know, like it's pretty obvious they aren't. Like, I mean, it's pretty obvious even in this offseason they aren't going to be tanking. But the, you know, Shadur Sanders is another one. You know, so I mean, like the class itself is pretty loaded. So if you do take that chance in, you know, taking a quarterback like that, you shouldn't say no to that. And, oh, by the way, there's also another avenue for you to go out and get a quarterback who may not necessarily be a Taysom Hill, but could be a better version of a Taysom Hill. And he sits there down there in San Francisco, that being Trey Lance. If you want to go out and trade for Trey Lance, you know, you can trade, say, a 3rd round pick, 4th round pick, maybe, if you would like to get Trey Lance. And then, you know, you have a quarterback who we all know is a much better passer than a guy like a Taysom Hill. You know, he clearly can run the football. So, I mean, like, you know, maybe that is your avenue that you can certainly go. And because Peyton has shown the ability to win with multiple quarterbacks. So I think that still, like, for me, if I to kind of put a bow on all of this, I feel like you're looking at more like the best way I could probably say this is maybe you're looking more like a Kansas City Chiefs type situation. Not saying they find their own version of Patrick Mahomes, you know, like that kind of guy, but I'm just saying like they would find the quarterback they would like, you know, to be their guy, and you would have him be groomed under, you know, Russell Wilson, you know, for like, you know, lack of better terms, like a year or two, and then you send it off to, you know, the quarterback that you would want.
So we're basically looking at Russell Wilson on like a 1-year prove it kind of thing, like prove that you earned that contract. So my question is Randy Gregory in the same category?
Well, let me just make one last
signing
point.
last year, and then he was hurt.
I feel like he's on a shorter leash than Russ is.
Glenn, go ahead and finish your.
I was just going to say, you know, like there's so much criticism about the Broncos giving Russ that contract. And when you think about it, like that trade never, he had a no trade clause. He would not have approved trade to the Broncos without a new deal being agreed to. Secondly, this is a guy that had been in the league 10 seasons and had great success, had won a Super Bowl, had been in a second one, had won a Super Bowl against our team. And, you know, it wasn't like they gave a 22-year-old, you know, second baseman a $250 million contract. They gave a proven player that. You know, so it just didn't work out last year.
Bye.
I think it's going to work. I do think that it is. I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, just I'll turn it back to you to re-ask your Randy Gregory question.
Well, and that's one of the things that we talked about last year was the chance that the Broncos took on Randy Gregory, kind of like the chance the Broncos took on trading for Russell Wilson. Wilson is in his last, not last year, but he's kind of in a 1-year prove-it deal because of how he played last year. Randy Gregory, history of injuries, gets injured last year again, misses a lot of last year. Is he in the same boat?
If I'm not mistaken, I think the Broncos can get out of that Randy Gregory contract prematurely because I think they front-loaded it, if I'm not mistaken, in order to give themselves some insurance in case this scenario did happen where he struggled to stay on the field, because he obviously had that significant history of not being on the field in Dallas. So I feel like this year, with Frank Clark being in the building, the hope that once Baron Browning shakes off those injuries that he'll take a step forward in his development, I feel like Randy Gregory could be on a short leash. And then we got Nick Benito still in the building, a former second-round pick. So there are commodities behind Randy Gregory, albeit somewhat unproven, to where if Gregory does not produce, then we need to give some more significant snaps to guys such as Nick Benito.
Yeah, so if you pull up Randy Gregory's contract, so like in 2024, he has a base salary of $13.7. He has a signing bonus of $2 He has a cap hit of 16, a dead cap of 6. His dead cap actually goes down after 2023. So you go from 22 to 6 to 4 to 2. The way Spot Track phrases it is his potential out is 2025, which in essence makes it a 3-year, $42 million deal with the $4 million in dead cap. But with the Waltons there, who knows? I mean, like, they could get out of this after 2024. And I love Randy Gregory. And again, this is nothing to do with him, with what we see on the field. This is about the product that he can continually be on the field. And he's never on the field. And so if he can put forth, that kind of season where we have come to expect in the deal that we signed him for, then I think that, it's very obvious that, he will be a Bronco after this, after this year. But there is definitely that window of possibility where he is not a Denver Bronco after this year. But I will say, and I certainly have seen it, but it's just like, if you, with all of the with all the talk about the new health and nutrition system that is being implemented, for the Denver Broncos, and the injury prevention and stuff that's being provided for this team, it certainly helps everybody within this room. It helps everybody within the Broncos organization. But if you could truly pick one person that it benefits the most, I would say Randy Gregory, because of his injury history and because of his lack of ability on the field. And in terms of when he is on the field, look at what happened last year. He was a top 3 player on the Broncos, like in the first couple of weeks. So it's very clear when he's healthy, he is a game wrecker.
It'll be interesting to see is if things go south with Russ this year and the Broncos do choose to get rid of him and they take these massive, cap hits, that could actually save some of these players from being let go of their contracts prematurely, because they just can't take further cap. They can't have further dead cap money out there. That said, for Cam to say anything that was remotely negative about a former Nebraska Cornhusker is very big of you, Cam.
How dare you?
I promise I'm
I will say this, though. There are 2 effective medicines, at least in the short term, for bad cap, and that is a cash-rich owner and a rookie quarterback. And the Broncos could potentially find themselves having both in a couple of years' time if Russell Wilson puts us in a position to have a top draft pick to get a rookie quarterback. Having a rookie quarterback that is dirt cheap on the roster would give us some significant cap relief, as well as, again, having a cash-rich owner that would allow us to prorate signing bonuses into future years, where then we'd have to kick the can down the road, essentially, a la the New Orleans Saints. We've got someone in the building in Sean Payton who's very familiar with that formula. So that's something that we could potentially be entertaining as a future for the Denver Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to stick with the defense, and I want to talk about spending money for those rich owners that we have. And sorry it took so long to get to the main topic, but Shelby Harris coming back to the Broncos, is that a thing? I keep hearing murmurs and whispers and like winks and all kinds of little things going around. Is he going to come back to the Broncos? Is that even in the cards?
Let Gage lead us off on this one, because he just did a recent Denver Broncos syndicate about this very subject.
Hence where I got the topic. Thank you, Gage.
Nice. So, I mean, first of all, as far as a fit for the team, yes, I feel like it makes total sense given Shelby's experience in Vance Joseph's defense and the fact that we need some more reinforcements on the interior defensive line. From that standpoint, it could make more sense. Shelby still lives in the Denver area. He's right here in our backyard. He's just a phone call away. I have heard Shelby would probably be open to coming back. That's just kind of Twitter rumblings I've seen. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but there's also the aspect where Shelby was very stung by the Broncos because they traded him away. You remember after the game against the Seahawks, Shelby got on the mic and said, "That's why you shouldn't have traded away your defensive lineman." Well, my cat comes back to say hello. That's why you shouldn't have traded away your defensive lineman. So who knows, man? Perhaps there is some butthurtedness, from lack of a better term, there from Shelby Harris. But
now the camera's all out of focus because it's on the cat.
Yeah, Frosty, you are an asshole. You know that. I love you, but you are an asshole. But overall, man, it would make a lot of sense for the Denver Broncos, and I feel like Shelby would probably be open to coming back. There are guys in the locker room that he's got that camaraderie with and that brotherhood with. It just makes a lot of sense at the end of the day.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that when you are at the age that he is, which is still hits his early 30s, but like when you get to that point, like, he probably understands his market. He knows the teams that probably want to sign him. So he's in no hurry. And, especially once you get to training camp, you get the idea, the coaches get that idea of like, all right, we're going to add this particular body, to that room. And then what better person to add to that room than also a person who is familiar with Vance Joseph, that being Shelby Harris. And so I think that, when you add him to that room, you not only have Zach Allen as your talking piece for potentially learning Vance Joseph's system, but Shelby Harris, who's really not missing a beat in terms of some of those players that are on that defensive line. And it would also help soften the blow of some of the moves that you've, unfortunately didn't make in the offseason. Guys like losing Deshaun Williams and then, maybe even re-signing Draymond Jones, right? So, I mean, it's just like, so the fact that you make a move like a Shelby Harris also allows you to bring that extra body in. And plus, with Zach Allen and Shelby Harris, you would have the greatest football team on the for a defensive line on the face of the earth. The way that they can, bat passes down, it would be tremendous. It would almost be like, Malik Jackson and Derek Wolfe again with the way that they could bat passes down.
I thought you were going to make a Top Gun reference.
Before you get into yours, I just wanted to point out that the oldest guy in the room is asking if Harris is too old to be effective. The oldest guy in every room wants to know.
Every room he enters, yeah.
Is this Bill?
Yes.
That's Bill.
Oh my God.
He wants to know if Shelby Harris is too old to be effective.
No, I think Shelby still has some gas in the tank. He played pretty well for Seattle. They had to cut him because of some cost-cutting maneuvers, but I feel like at the end of the day, Shelby would probably take a little bit less money to come to Denver. It probably wouldn't be vet minimum or anything like that, but I feel like Shelby would take maybe $1 or $2 million less to come back to Denver and not have to change cities again. His kids could go to the same schools, all that kind of stuff. I just feel like from a family perspective also, it would make a lot of sense for Shelby's family to stay here.
Well, yep.
Gage, just save your breath. Bill already fell asleep between asking the question. And not to mention not having to maintain two homes, by living somewhere else and having a household. But Shelby, and I'm looking at his, like 3 days ago, he retweeted and said, coming soon. And it was a next gen stat, most QB pressure rate by a defensive tackle in 2022. And he ranked 4th behind Quinnen Williams, Javon Hargrave, and Dexter Lawrence.
It's pretty good company.
So, yeah, I would say so. So I don't think he's too old, Bill. And plus his personality, the fans love him, his production, he's clutch. I would love to see him back.
Well, and outside of kickers, punters, and like Tom Brady, like the offensive line and defensive line, I feel like are the ones that last the longest in the NFL. Like you get a lot of offensive linemen that are like 37, 38, 39. Same thing with defensive tackles, because they're not bending around the corner. But you have a lot of them that last in their, late 30s. Yep. So I don't think so.
We've got so many young players in our building too. Shelby would just be a fantastic veteran sounding board for guys like Matt Henningsen, Yomo Wazirike. I mean, you'd have veterans like Zach Allen, Shelby Harris, Mike Purcell, all these sounding boards. Yes, DJ Jones, absolutely. I mean, this would be such a huge addition. I feel like it would really complete our defensive line, but Shelby's probably not in a hurry to make any move yet. I don't think he wants to deal with training camp, at least the first part
let's
of
say he's
camp.
waiting until after training camp.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is why I said earlier, like he's kind of like waiting until the coaches kind of come to him and be like, you know what, our room sucks. What deal do you want?
Yeah.
But you know, Cam mentioned Malik Jackson a minute ago. I think we'd be remiss to leave out the fact that he actually announced his retirement. He's been out of the game for 2 years, but he officially announced it on Good Morning Football the other day. And there was a fabulous interview with Dave Logan, Ryan Edwards, and Big Al on KOA this afternoon with Malik. And just when you think of what he meant to that team, the 2015 team, scoring the first touchdown, how that changed the whole course of that day. I mean, just wish him well. I missed him when he left. I totally understood why he did. Made sense. And wish him success in his future life. Guy's a super smart guy. Was a great Bronco, and we appreciate all he did.
I feel like our two biggest immediate losses from our Super Bowl 50 defense were him and Danny Trevathan. Just the production that Malik Jackson brought to that defensive line alongside Derek Wolfman, that was such a lethal interior, and that allowed guys such as Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware to feast. And again, man, our Super Bowl would not have been the same without Malik Jackson, an incredible locker room guy. He got the bag in Jacksonville, then bounced around a little bit, but absolutely phenomenal Denver Bronco, and I'm more than happy to have him be able to wrap up his career.
I'm trying to look around the cat's tail.
God. I'm like, is a butthole a fitting tribute to any player?
Okay, so I think the big question is, when are we going to get a Denver Broncos?
Yes.
When are we going to get a Denver Broncos syndicate episode of just your cat bugging you throughout the whole thing? That's what we need,
dude. I have to edit her out so much; it's crazy.
One of the other things that I want to talk about, sticking with the defense, Mike Kliss came out and was talking about the new additions to the Broncos. Glenn sent me this attachment in the messages, but there's a lot of hype around Drew Sanders, which surprises me a little bit because I thought we were all pretty excited about Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton, but now it's sounding like Drew Sanders, maybe not at the beginning of the year, is going to play a lot, but in the second part of the season, it sounds like he's going to get some playing time.
I'm not surprised by it. I mean, it's something that we've talked about, you know, even with the linebacker room, and in terms of Drew Sanders, I mean, you guys can go back to listen to some of the future or the past, you know, mainly Broncos episodes, but it's just like, we've talked about it ad nauseum. I mean, it's just like, we had this feeling that with Drew Sanders and with him being a phenomenal athlete, that you can't keep that athlete off the field. You have to find a way to get that guy on the field, whether it's on special teams or, you know, some other places, you know, on the field. You have to get him on there. And, you know, and the fact that he's making these kinds of strides should make us, you know, even happier, knowing the fact that, you know, he has that chance to see the field. And, you know, and sadly, even though we like Josie Jewell and, you know, and even though that he seems to be entering a contract year, we have a guy that Sean Payton very clearly believes in. And so if Sanders is going to be that inside linebacker that replaces Josie, he is a physical freak. And, you know, and so if he makes those kinds of impact that he can on the field, Bronco fans should be super excited for that.
Yeah. And sorry to cut anybody off, but Gage, I did want to ask, because that's what I was wondering, is if you have Drew Sanders playing, who does he replace? I mean, you've got Josie and Singleton both on what, 30 million contracts? So you just signed Singleton. No, am I wrong?
Singleton's 3 for 18.
And Josie's
they're both making $6 million a year.
Together. Oh, okay, together. I'm just trying to figure out, like, you have these newer linebackers in Jewell and Singleton. Who gets replaced if you're bringing in Sanders?
Inclinations, I feel like, have been that it will be Josie Jewell. And with Sanders, man, I just feel like he's going to find his way on the field, praise does not come lightly from Sean Payton, and Sean Payton was singing high praise about this guy. Oh,
the Cats!
Oh, let's go. Oh, man.
That cat was like, get me the hell out of here.
Yeah, the cat was like, I ain't having this. I ain't having this.
Like a stark contrast between Gage's cat and then Glenn's cat.
It's true. It is true. I love cats,
Hi,
man.
Mrs.
Cats are the best. Oh, that's fantastic, man. That is fantastic.
He's Mrs. Glenn forever now.
2 out of the 4, yeah.
But with Drew Sanders, man, he's somebody that in rookie minicamp stood out from, according to people who were there, reporter-wise, and from Sean Payton himself, man. Drew Sanders stood out as a stud in rookie minicamp. So Josie Jewell may unfortunately be the odd man out, especially considering the money that we just gave to Alex Singleton. And that's tough because I think we all love Josie Jewell here in Broncos country, but Drew Sanders may be like Josie Jewell on steroids, man.
My honey bear.
Yeah. And the fact that Josie and Singleton really connected last year and just became the dynamic duo, obviously buddies off the field. You know, I was really surprised to actually see that there's talk of that being in the works even before the season starts. So
was it Bree that named him was it Bash Brothers, Smash Brothers, one of the two? I know somebody came out and called them like the Bash Brothers, Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton.
Right, they're the Bash Brothers, yeah.
So that's why I'm a little surprised. Like, obviously, you want the best player on the field, but I am a little surprised that we're already talking about, Josie Jewell is probably going to get replaced. Like, that sucks a little bit.
It does.
It does. But I mean, like, those conversations, I think, were happening the moment Drew Sanders was drafted. And so there was also another pretty significant note that was also in the Cliss article, if I'm not mistaken, for another rookie. And I think it was J.L. Skinner is also expected to not be placed on the PUP list. Like that was one of the other things that he had mentioned that is pretty significant. So, I mean, if we're talking about a player that also could be seeing some playing time, early playing time, Skinner is one of those guys that probably could be seeing some special teams work, maybe some small, little roles there on the, on the defense. But like, that's a big deal, especially even for, these guys like De'Laren Turner-Yell, players that like, are on the roster bubble, if you will. So, I mean, like, that's a pretty big deal.
Do you think that Skinner could maybe be in the mix for like the dime role for the Broncos?
I feel like there's multiple different players that you could put in that situation. Because I think now this was with the Juro Evero, but guys like PJ Locke also showed that as well last year. And so I think that like PJ Locke and Skinner, I think are probably two of those guys versatility wise you probably could use in that role. And we mentioned this last week, but I think it's probably one of the reasons why the safety room kind of makes up for maybe some of that corner back depth that you have. That you can use some of those players, in those nickel situations. And frankly, like I know Kareem Jackson, father time is, about creeping up to him, but he's also in his career shown to be a corner. And in some situations, it may call him to be a nickel corner in some situations.
As we're talking about these defensive players, like I am so excited about the defensive talent and on this team, and the final cuts are going to be very, very interesting because, in some instances we talk about, some of the depth, being a little bit short, but in most of these position rooms, these guys, there's quite a bit of selection, and there's some, we had 5 picks in the draft, and I think they did a pretty good job getting some players that are going to make some impact early on and take some spots that were not expected to be lost.
Yeah, and even in undrafted free agency, like one guy I feel like could make an impact as a defensive player as an undrafted free agent is defense tackle PJ Mustipher. I mean, he may be a guy who could find his way on the field just because of the raw talent that he possesses as an early down run stuffer. Frosty, I think you're just going to become the new mascot of this podcast at this point.
There we go.
He already is.
But there's also 2 more rookies that I'm hearing good things about. One, Riley Moss, who's already expected to be the top backup at outside of nickel. And then Alex Forsythe, which is interesting. 7th round pick, but he's expected to push Cushenberry for the starting spot, which I don't know if that's a bad thing for Cushenberry or really, really good for Forsyth. Like,
it's good for Forsyth. Let's just
Yeah, let's just say it's good for Forsyth and leave it at that.
yeah, it's but that's one of the things we said though. Is we said like when you talk about Forsyth, like can he be a guy that pushes a guy like a Lloyd Cushenberry? Which by the way, if Forsyth is getting that kind of recognition, what does that tell us about Luke Wattenberg?
That's what I was going to say. You still got Cushenberry, Kyle Ford, and Wattenberg there too.
So I mean, it's pretty clear that like maybe the Broncos, feel pretty comfortable, with Forsyth maybe down the line. But this is good news if you're a Broncos fan, seeing maybe this center of the future already getting that kind of recognition. And then maybe that's too soon to say, but like I'm using some Forsyth on that one. But I just think that if you were to look at it from the center position, like really, like I just think that like if he's able to impress early, the best way that he can be able to take that center position as a starter is in preseason games and obviously starting right now. When you're a 7th round draft pick, just start right now.
Yeah, and one of the things that I did want to mention just a little bit, and I know I didn't put it in the notes, but it just popped in my head, so we're going to talk about it.
Muted.
No, I don't know why I muted because my mic is right here. Whatever.
Sometimes you just want to mute yourself. It's okay.
It might be that way. The difference between training camp for Hackett and Payton, like we already know that we're going to get starters in the preseason games, which is something we didn't see last year. I know where Bill stands. Where do you guys stand on starters playing in the preseason games? There we go.
It's been proven that these teams need to get some reps together. These starters need to play in these games. I mean, it's been going on since the beginning of time. It's evolved to where maybe they're not in every game and such, but they're at least some of the games. Like, they're doing some plays. There's supposedly, with Payton, he doesn't waste anything. He doesn't waste any time. He doesn't waste a rep. He's so organized. There's a purpose to everything. And, you had Nathaniel Hackett last year, who was, basically like a cheerleader for Russell Wilson and just, like wanted to be buddies with all the guys. Players like to be coached. They want structure. And we saw last year that was a colossal failure. We saw it starting in game 1 and lasting until the coach was dismissed before the season even ended.
Yeah. That's all I feel like going to start in training camp, because I'm somebody who was out at training camp pretty much every day last year, and I'm going to be out there the same this year almost every day.
Such a stalker.
For real. But the lethargic energy that you just felt during practice, I mean, you could tell that guys didn't want to be there, and the energy reflected in the intensity of the practices, man. Guys were only going about 25% when they should have probably been going 50 to 75%. You're never going to go 100% into training camp practice, but you want to get as close to it, especially when the pads come on. And I remember the second padded practice, I didn't get out for the first one, but the second one was so lethargic. And then also we saw virtually no 7-on-7 drills last year. And that was really to our detriment, because you saw receivers running the wrong routes. You saw guys blowing their assignments. It was horrible. And that lack of execution, I feel like, would not have happened if they got the chance to rep it multiple times over in 7-on-7 drills. I'm not going to lie. This is really a fair take here. It is, because Nathaniel Hackett practices looked like peewee football at times. It looked, I've seen higher intensity practices in high school. I really have.
Yeah. It's funny. If you were to tell me even, so like, if Sean Payton was the coach last year, I would probably feel a little bit comfortable if the Broncos starters did not play in the preseason because of the fact that it's Sean Payton, right? But then, because Nathaniel Hackett was there and it's the first year with Nathaniel Hackett, he's a first-year head coach, I feel like you would have wanted your starters to play in preseason to get that kind of experience. And so with Sean Payton, here, and of course the fact that the Broncos didn't play their starters in preseason, I actually feel okay with this idea of playing their starters in preseason because of the fact of last year. But, I think like what'll be interesting, because like I'm in the middle on this, because it's like it's one like you want your players to maintain their health, and and so I think what'll be interesting is say next year and the year after that, depending on what the Broncos certainly will do in the regular season. But like come that point, like how will Sean Payton use those players, those starters in preseason next year? Will he kind of, taper off a little bit and, play a certain number of starters and, and leave and give the notable starters like rest, like Pat Surtain, and stuff like that. So, I mean, like,
No,
what will they
not
get?
Not going to happen, Cam. Not going to happen.
I can't foresee the future, but it's one of those things like that's something that for my sake, yeah. So.
Aren't you surprised though, Hackett coming in first time head coach, and he just changes quite a few of the traditional ways of preparing a team for the season. He just decided to eliminate them. It's pretty surprising.
Yeah, it was insane. I mean, I just think back to, it was the only way that I would say that it was actually a positive was, not playing the starters, was you at least got a really, really good look at the younger players, that were in preseason. So that obviously gave them. So like if you were in that locker room, it probably gave them a lot of time to shine and, feel appreciated, certainly. So I don't know. But again, like, it's just when people have their own system and their own identity, you certainly want to make it known on year one and the moment you step foot in that building. But it is pretty crazy when you think of how stark it's been with Sean Payton versus Nathaniel Hackett.
So I want to end the podcast with one question, and it's a question that I put in the notes, but I'm going to throw a wrinkle into it. You cannot use Russell Wilson. What player benefits the most from Sean Payton?
I'm going with Jerry Jeudy.
I think the exact. Sorry, go ahead.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Gage.
No, go ahead.
I mean, he's ready for a breakout season. So much of his skill set fits into what Sean Payton has traditionally done. He's got plenty of tape from Michael Thomas that he can look into and see the success that he had with the Saints. I think Jeudy is going to benefit the most outside of Russ, of course.
Mine's another wide receiver, but it's not Jerry Jeudy. It's Courtland Sutton. I feel like Courtland Sutton's going to thrive in sort of the X wide receiver role. I feel like we're going to see a career resurgence from Courtland Sutton this year. I feel like Sean Payton sees him and it's like, this is the closest thing that I've had to prime Michael Thomas in a while. Not saying Courtland Sutton's prime Michael Thomas, but just in terms of raw skill set, Payton knows he's got something to work with there. So I feel like Courtland Sutton, just the way that Payton's been gassing him up in press conferences, could be that guy.
What about a Marcus Colston, comparison too for Portland? Do you think
that's
that
a better one
as well?
I would almost say Tim Patrick would be the Marcus Colston just based on the height and size, but I will go with another guy. I mean, I won't say Jerry Jeudy because Jerry Jeudy has always been my number one choice, and he will be my number one choice as far as, a player that benefits most from Sean Payton, because I've been on record saying that. I will say Greg Dulcich. As being the guy that benefits the most. We're talking about a guy that he wears number 80. He is, he's that wide receiver type tight end that he's had with Jimmy Graham. And we all know the kind of success that Jimmy Graham had in his first couple of years in New Orleans under Sean Payton. The guy literally put up 1,000 yards. I mean, as a tight end, and I'm not saying Dulcich is going to be that kind of guy that puts up 1,000 yards as a tight end because you can't predict that. I mean, those are stats like Darren Waller and Travis Kelce. Those are kinds of stuff that they put up. But I mean, we're talking about a guy that you can use in a lot of different situations. And if you're going to use an honorable mention, it's crazy for me to say this because he's in the doghouse and he may be on the roster bubble, but you have to say the same thing for Albert Okwuegbunam, because I think that Albert Okwuegbunam is a very unknown in this room, but you can also certainly use him in a lot of the same ways that Greg Dulcich is. And so I think that, it's absolutely paramount that, we get a really good season from Alberto, because if we don't, he's not going to be a Denver Bronco potentially even on week 1. But Greg Dulcich is the guy for me next to Jerry Jeudy that it really benefits from this. And I think that I said it before, but I think there is a distinct possibility that Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton do not lead the team in touchdowns, and that it is actually Greg Dulcich that is actually going to be the leader in touchdowns in 2023 because of his red zone ability and his red zone presence.
So I'm actually going to go the opposite way, and I'm going to say Justin Simmons. And the reason why I say that is because for the past, 6 years, the Broncos offense has been absolutely horrible, and the defense has had to carry the team, which puts more pressure on a team captain like Justin Simmons. I think that the presence of Sean Payton on the team, being able to stabilize that offense, is going to take pressure off of the defense and just allow Justin to play. I think Justin can be better than he has been because there's not so much pressure on him to have to pull off a play or we lose the game. So I think Justin Simmons is going to benefit the most just because of the stability on offense.
And I think it's fair.
I'm smart sometimes.
Well, no, I was just thinking, I think it's fair, but also I think if you're saying someone who benefits it, I would tend to, maybe go to a player that's, been struggling but they have all the talent in the world to show that. And so like a guy like, a Jerry Jeudy or Greg Dulcich, Albert Okwuegbunam, even a Cortland Sutton, I think are very viable candidates. Even a Tim, I don't want to say a Tim Patrick, but he's coming back from injury.
Yes, he's back. Back again.
But yeah, so, and plus like with Justin Simmons, though, we've seen what he can do. Like it's very obvious what we've seen from him. Like he's on a Hall of Fame type trajectory. That may be a hot take, but like he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He's an All-Pro. And so he's garnered all of that. If he didn't have all of that and he was like one of those players that didn't have any sort of attention like that, then I probably would have said Justin Simmons.
Well, and I'll also say as kind of a consolation pick, I would say Samaje Perine. Like you're going from backing up Joe Mixon, who's arguably top 5 running back in the league, to potentially being the breadwinner running back, just in case like the workhorse running back, in case Javonte can't go, Samaje Perine, kind of takes.
What if they sign Dalvin Cook tomorrow?
I still think Dalvin Cook goes to Miami.
I'm just saying though, like, what if they sign Dalvin Cook tomorrow? Like,
I don't know. What if?
I gotta be honest, I wouldn't be very endorsive of that move.
Yeah.
Really?
No.
Because of Javonte, or just not a fan of Dalvin?
It's a little bit of both, honestly. I mean, I'm a fan of Dalvin. I just don't feel like I'm a fan of the money he's commanding. And then with Javonte, I honestly feel like the way the team has been really, they're banking on Javonte being ready for better or for worse. And Samaje is a decent insurance policy, but he's no Javonte Williams, man.
So I know we're running long, but here's the question, because I know that with Sean Payton, you say who's going to benefit the most from Sean Payton, and since you said Justin Simmons, and with it being Vance Joseph, who do you think is going to benefit the most from Vance Joseph returning?
PS2.
I was going to say PS2. I mean, the way they could run so much man defense with PS2 and the way that Vance gets clever with his blitz disguises and all that, I feel like that could really give a chance for someone like PS2 to thrive as a true one-on-one man corner.
Well, and that was one of the things that people were saying against PS2 is like, oh, well, he's only covering one side. Like he's not always covering the best guy. And I think with Vance Joseph, he's going to be covering the best guy. no more excuses. He's going to show he's the best corner in the league.
Works for me.
Exclamation point. All right, that's going to do it for us. We appreciate everybody that joined us in the chat. Make sure you check out every other show that's on the network. We got shows Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The neighborhood's starting back up when the Broncos games start, so make sure you check that out. I want to thank Cameron Parker. I want to thank Glenn Hauser. I want to thank Gage Madrid for joining me on the show. It's always fun being in here with you guys. And everybody in the chat, we love you. We love the Broncos. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.